Welcome back, everybody. Here we are. It's been a while for another chess game, and I'm going to try and keep this one a little bit quicker. I think the 35 plus minute games are getting a little old, so we're going to try and keep this one moving a little bit more if we can. So I'm white in this one, and I start off with, I guess, technically something slightly different this time. I'm going queen pawn instead of Roy Lopez as always. And standard procedure, Queen's Gambit, just kind of move things up, attack the center, see if you can't get him to go on over and get out of your way and everything. No big deal. And he defends it with E. Normally I see people push up on C, but it does block in the horse. However, when you push up with the E pawn, it does block your light squared bishop. So either way, if you use one of the pawns, you're kind of blocking in one of your minor pieces temporarily. So I'm not really sure which one's the more better. I mean, I guess technically you see C more often, but either way, they both work just fine. Neither one of them is really a huge deal, and I just proceed to continue getting out my pieces on the queen side first, mostly because I just want to block off this diagonal. I could push the pawn, but obviously it's better to develop pieces if you can instead. So I'll just get him out there, and then I'll start making progress from there. But then he accepts the gambit, and that's, I don't want to say unusual, but I don't think you see gambits accepted as often now as you did back in the day, whatever that's supposed to mean with chess. I feel like when I was a lot younger and I was learning and training in chess and this and that, half the time you'd see people accept or not and this and that, and maybe it's just something lower level players do. They see free pawn and take it and figure they'll try and work their way around it from there, whereas higher level play tends to just kind of ignore them for a while until a bunch of tension builds up and then other things happen. So I don't know, I wasn't expecting it. I don't really see it that happen that often, and especially not in Queen's Gambit, I definitely don't accept it myself either. So it was just interesting, but I'm always happy whenever I do see it. It allows me just to take control over the center, and then that free piece is immediately attacked and I can get it back with tempo pretty much right away, which I feel like those are reasons you don't see it very often. He's going about defending it in an interesting way. Usually you kind of just ignore it and continue on with the rest of the game from there. So he's going about it interestingly. If I were to take it, he's clearly going to push up, and then I have to retreat. And then if he pushes up one more time to attack my knight, it makes for an interesting dilemma that I'm seeing. Both of those spots will be taken away and he'll die. I'm covering up one of them, so there's his three best squares. Going here with the knight would really suck. It's out of the way. You don't want knights on the end. He's just bleh. Going down here it's playable because at that point my bishop's already out. So sure, this square is not as terrible as it otherwise could be. It at least gets him back supporting the middle a little bit. So it's not the end of the world, but I think I'd rather just ignore it completely. It's a little unusual, I feel like, what I've just seen these last couple of moves, so I'm going to do something too. Why not? A couple of games before this, playing randomly, I saw a lot of people pushing up pawns, multiple squares as opposed to just the one to block off to block off pins. So I thought about it, I'm like, well, if I put my pawn here and attack this square, he can't go after it, because if he does, then it's going to open up a free line for the rook. So I'll be able to, just push up here, and then I'm still going to get this pawn, and we'll see how it goes. However, after doing moves like these in a couple random games, every time I double pushed and no longer had possible protection over these squares on the 4th rank, I kind of regretted it. I kind of wish that I had a pawn, sitting right here to do something about this square, and I never did. So I wouldn't recommend doing that, but it was interesting, and it technically works. So it's not the end of the world. He's going up again as well. It temporarily blocks off his knight, but now he's just preparing for a major, whatever the hell, trident attack. Sure. But it gives me my time now. I can just take that pawn. It's whatever. I'm not really concerned about that. If he wants to go over and trade some pieces, I've already kind of gained the benefit at that point with multiple pieces attacking. And that's where he capitalizes on me passing up my chance to attack it. I'm like, well, that's interesting. So I do get pinned anyway, which will obviously prevent me from attacking in here. And I can't castle just yet because I haven't moved this horse out. So usually, depending on how I position myself in the game, I'll put my queen here, or obviously I could go there with the bishop and negate that. But right now my queen is the only thing defending this pawn, so I don't want to put the bishop out here. So I kind of make a weird move. I think I forgot about this pawn temporarily, or I figured I don't care at this exact moment if he wanted to take it, because I go all the way over this time, attacking his bishop, which is temporarily unguarded. So if he wanted to take the pawn, then I take the bishop. At that point, this is guarded by the horse. These are both guarded by the queen. He's not going to take that. So, I mean, everything at that point is still covered. So, I guess it'd be okay. I figure he'll probably just push up one of these two pawns, and I might even get to just trade it off anyway, no big deal, and kind of go from there. So just, I don't know, I just felt like making a different move. Instead of going here, it made more sense to attack the bishop entirely if I'm not going to defend that piece. And, you know, puts both in a line. Granted, it's not a good line, but puts both in a line, so we'll see. He does end up just blocking that off, giving him a nice little pivot that's going to be really hard to get taken away. So I'm going to make an obvious move now. 1, defend it. 2, free up the space so I can castle. Really nothing to it. He also proceeds to develop, and for the moment I can't do anything to save this pawn since this horse is in fact pinned. So the best way to go about preventing this horse from doing anything is either push up the pawn or just develop a piece and make the pin himself. So he does proceed to attack, and I'm thinking, well, I could bounce back, and I don't think he would double push after me. Although granted, it would make an interesting play if he then pushes the pawn again. At least this horse has a safe square to go to temporarily. In fact, it would even allow him to bounce right back down and attack the bishop from there. But I figure it's kind of awkward. You know what? I'm just going to go for it. His queen is going to be attacking this pawn no matter which square he's on. And this bishop wasn't doing anything until right now anyway, so if I trade him away, I just relieve myself a little bit of whatever. And if I do spend some time, perhaps to run him back there to guard it, or if I run him back here to guard the horse, I really just spent 2 moves to go to one of these squares. And that's just losing time for nothing. So wasn't really interested in that, and regardless of which one I pick, he's going to have his choosings as far as which piece to take. So I just opted to trade, and I don't know what that is. It's unusual, to say the least. I fully expected him to take it right back with the queen. It further develops it, I guess. It's in a position at that point, though, where I'm not really going to be able to attack it with anything. My other bishop can't get over there. My queen obviously isn't going to be attacking another queen. This horse in theory could, but he's currently pinned, and his squares that he would have to go to do so are bad. I guess I could push my pawn, and then I don't know where his queen would go. But it's neither here nor there. I don't think it's necessarily that big of a deal that he'd be so afraid that he wouldn't want to take it with the queen, because what if I push my pawn? Oh, heaven forbid. Definitely not worth opening up your kingside defense for. That it was very unusual to me, but at the same time, and maybe he's thinking he's just gonna aim right down into my king's area, because I'm certainly not castling queenside, so maybe he's just trying to make a really offensive play, and then eventually he'll just move his king into one of these 2 squares, and it'll be nice and safe. I don't know, it just seemed weird. So I castle, and at this point we're 11 moves in. I've got my rooks connected, all my pieces are out and developed. I've got mostly control of the center. The pawns are kind of in a stalemate, whereas his bishop right now currently sucks. His rook is doing nothing. This horse doesn't have a great square to develop to. So I'm definitely winning in time and space right now. And now that everything's finally out, I can start taking a look at how do I want to attack the situation at hand. For the moment, I don't particularly have any ideas, but his very next play, he castles into this open, undefended file that he just freed up, which makes it even more strange. Those 2 moves in a row just seem very strange to me. I really think that if you're going to open that up, you're better off just moving each one of these 1 guys, one at a time, or really get the king out so that the queen is still connected with the rook. It just doesn't make that much sense to me. It seems unsafe, because now your rook can't help out at all in this open file, and your king is just much more vulnerable than he was before when he was in his home square. So, But, however, like I said, I've got all my stuff kind of developed and active, at least. There's this nice open thing, so I really want to kind of start to find a way to capitalize on that. If he's going to make mistakes, I need to do something to make it actually be a mistake, as opposed to allow him to correct it before I do anything about it. So, first thought is, one, get a rook over on here on this semi-open file, defend that pawn, give it a little bit extra support, but really kind of have it work its way over into being in these open squares, and then eventually push this pawn up as well, so I can maybe get this rook over here. My queen's already on this line, so that's decent, and maybe if some things change with these pawns, then having both of these guys on the diagonal pointed towards king will be beneficial as well. I just need to get these horses out of the way now that my rooks are starting to get activated. So he develops his knight, but it kind of blocks his queen in a little bit, so it's bittersweet. And I'm going to go after his bishop now. It's mostly just a distraction, because this is a terrible place to put the knight, but I wasn't going to put it back in its home square. I'm certainly not going to one of these, and I guess I could have gone here, further put some defense up on this square, give me somewhere else to go, but I guess I figured this square, it's kind of worthless. I didn't really have any other plans to do with it. It just puts me in another position where a pawn is just dominating the square completely. So I suppose here could maybe be good for something later. It's whatever, but I figured if I just attack this bishop and at least get it out of the way, maybe I can move this rook, because right now I can't. Or if he's really concerned about it, and he retreats multiple squares as opposed to trading off with the pawn, he's further retreating and giving me more space and more time. So I guess I put myself in a bad position with the knight for that reason, I suppose. I figured it would make him retreat. Instead, he counters my attack with an attack of his own, and I'm thinking, okay, well, if I take, and then he takes, okay, I could take, and then he can take, and then I can take. I guess I get a pawn out of the whole deal, but then all of this is cleaned up. My queen is no longer on a spot where I really want it. It's not teamed up with anything. And so I don't know, I didn't like where that would have put me, even though I could have gained a pawn from it. So I figured, I'm just going to save my bishop first instead. Maybe I can get my bishop over here and help support some of these squares if I get some open files. Or maybe just really save it for later. It's not a hindrance to have extra bishops, especially when he's got all these open squares. So I figured I'll save it for now. I could have potentially won the pawn, but meh, I didn't really want to do it. So he wastes his time and brings his knight right on back. Okay, not really quite sure where he's going to go, because this pawn dominates him. If you get a pawn or a bishop 3 squares away from a knight, you're going to suffocate him. So it just seems interesting. That's probably his third move out of, what are we on, move 14? 3 out of 14 moves that were a little subpar. So, I don't know, maybe he's having some pie or something. And now I'm bringing my queen over. I'm identifying a nice weak hanging pawn over here, and if I can get my queen there safely, it's really going to put a hamper on where his king can go. He'll be nice and suffocated in, and even if this rook wasn't here, it was somewhere else, I don't know where, his king can't run away because the queen would be guarding it, so he'd be really suffocated. And at that point, I just need 1 or 2 other pieces in this area somewhere, and checkmate might not be that far away. And he chooses to put his knight right on back. So his last couple moves has been knight, knight, knight. Okay, so he's identifying this pawn now as well. So we're both targeting a hanging pawn over here. And while I think this one's a little bit better for me to get, he then could be identifying others. And I figure maybe if I can just push this guy once, I'll shut down the knight, and it'll make him waste a little bit more time. He won't be able to take that pawn. I don't want to pass up the chance to have this guy. I mean, I guess really what could he do? But he could move his king over here, I suppose. It'll save the pawn, but I don't think it'll save all my potential theoretical attacks of trying to get my major pieces over on this open file. But I guess if he moves his king there, he can move his rook down here, and that would definitely get in my way. So it was a tough decision. I was like, I don't know, do I really want to waste the time for it or not? But in the end, I ended up going with defense first, trying to see what I could really accomplish. and he opts now to finally run his bishop away, cramp himself in a little bit more. Sure, he's got this extra pawn over here, but if he does anything with it, we're just going to trade, and he's going to remain with a double pawn in order to free up the bishop so they can do anything. So not upset about that whatsoever. So my knight's move over there ended up being successful. I was able to withdraw his bishop. He bounced around with his knight a couple of times and wasted a bunch of time. So we see now, when I started all of that stuff, I was at like +1, maybe +1.1, yeah, after I castle. And now the game thinks I'm up +3. I haven't done anything. Nothing's been taken, but apparently I've gained 2 pawns worth of time and space, is really all we've accomplished. So it worked out. And at this point, he didn't go after to protect that pawn, so I do take it now and just start drowning his king in fear a little bit. And I love that. It says I'm up +3. I take a pawn, and now I'm up 2.9, whatever. I just like seeing the numbers up here. I think it's entertaining, more so than anything else. 2.8, oh great, I'm getting worse for taking pieces. Everything's still covered, so I guess they thought I had better stuff to do with it somewhere else. He responds by pushing a double pawn, so it allows him an alley where he can start getting some of his pieces through. If his bishop is attacking me over here, well, I can take it, and for the moment that'll be good enough because he won't be able to take it back with my queen there. So maybe if he pushes, no, because then he can't go through if he pushes it through. So I'm really just kind of trying to think of if there's anything that this stops my major attacks for. I don't even really care about these 2 pawns right now. If I push it, I block off a square from my knight, and I don't really want to do that. If I take it, he probably just redoubles, and then there's, it's not as secure having just an isolated guy in the center right there, but it's something. If I'm up a little bit, oh man, these last 2 moves, +3, I take a couple of pawns and I lose half of it. That's interesting. I guess it was a bad move, but I'm really just trying to clean up a little bit of space. If I ignored it completely, like I said, I don't want to push it because the horse may want to go there eventually and start supporting. Oops. And come on, X, come on. Start supporting some of those attacking squares up by his king. So if I ignore it or I push it, I don't want him taking and then being right in my face, and maybe things happen about it. So I don't know. He drops his bishop down 1, putting a little extra pressure on here, but I've got the 2 pieces, so I don't particularly care. I'm just advancing my rooks at this point to start getting them over here while I have a little bit of time. Wanted to get that first so that when I bring my knight over, if he does choose to take it, I've still got all these attacks on the queen, so I'll have to move there, and that will allow me my space to get in against this king. So I want to have that over first before moving the horse anywhere. He responds now with finally taking that, and whoa! What do we have here? We've got a very, very good offensive situation going on. What the computer sees by jumping me up to 8.2 there is a very powerful threat by moving my horse right here, because it gives me a nice checkmate square in 1 if he doesn't respond to it. Well, the only way he can respond to it is taking it, to which, what was the answer to that? There was something, I just don't remember what it was. Oh, that's right. I pin it down there so he can't take his queen with me. And that allows me to either just take it with the rook or take it with the queen. And there's nothing he'd be able to do in response. If you know what, let's just go through that. If I were to have played this, which I did not, pretty much, let's back up 1 more square. If he doesn't respond to it, I've got checkmate in 1, so he must do something about this. His king can't move. He can't really put anything else in the way. If the bishop goes to one of these squares, it doesn't block it. So, under the impression that he does take it, his bishop is now pinned. I mean, what, does he put the queen down there? I can still just take whatever I want to take at this point. It's kind of rough. If he doesn't do anything about it whatsoever, let's just say he moves, I don't know, something. Then we're talking check. He's only way out. More free pieces, lots of free stuff. So that's what the game sees at this move, and I did not. I was still focused on having it defended by the horse. And I didn't want him to get his bishop on this square. I guess I figured with him having a defended piece attacking my queen, I guess I thought that was bad. not realizing that that would be so beneficial for me. It would win the game completely. I thought that this was just a better square, having it defended with a discovered attack at the same time. So I opted for that square, and he proceeds to play with, I don't know, this doesn't really help him. There's lots of pressure going on. I finally freed up all my space over here. I got lots of pieces to attack with. I don't really know what he could do either, I suppose. A couple of bad plays of just opening up lots of space and cramping in his own pieces all kind of hindered him. He could have potentially pushed this pawn, I suppose, to prevent my rook from going over, but really I just have to waste some time moving my queen down here. Taking the pawn, it would free up a space for his bishop to go, whether he can do something with it or not. Maybe he puts his queen down in that square first, so that way he gets a queen to defend with, although the horse is guarding this square, so I'm not really quite sure how far he would go with it, but I guess, if he pushed and I take, brings queen down here, no, okay, so it doesn't help him really after all. He's still a turn short. Or plus, just take his queen, I could do that too. Yeah, I guess just all those turns of lost time, bouncing horses around and moving his bishops all the way back into nothing, have finally caught up to him. All that lost time has resulted in me finally getting my open space. I get out my attacks. His king can't move anywhere. He can put a bishop in the way, blocking it in two different squares. Neither one really matters. It looks like I'm going to get what I want in the end anyway. I could take it with either one of my pieces, but I choose to take it with the rook, forcing the queen to come down in here and end up taking the queen for free. It might be a little bit slower, as we saw. Yeah, right here the computer says I've got mate in 7, which I'm guessing if I take it with the queen is how that works. Nope. Now mate in 7's gone. Huh. I wonder where that mate in 7 comes from. I don't know. Maybe we could count moves, but I chose to do it with this. Take, puts him in check again. His only option, well, I guess he's got two options. Could have gone in either spot. Well, no, actually, if he went there, queen goes here, covering these two, that's total checkmate. So he had one option, and at this point I'm just going to start bringing these pieces back. One, getting this over here, pinning a pawn for whatever reason I feel like I guess I can, but also freeing up space for my rook to now come over and pretty much do the exact same thing I just had going on for me. He does what he can to get a little bit of defense in here and make some attacks and cover some of this space. But instead of retreating and putting him in check, because really if I do that, he's just going to bounce back over here, and then we're kind of in just like a no man's land. Like, what are we? I'm not really going to accomplish anything. If I make the king eventually bounce his way over there, he gets a little bit safer, and I still can't take the rook because it'll be defended by the king. So I opt to take a pawn with check. Again, forcing him, if he wants to retreat away, I get checkmate. And if he wants to put the rook in front of the way, I suppose, then I can take it lots of times with lots of pieces. So he's forced to take it, and I make that trade. So I gain a pawn, but I also simplify the board a little bit. I've got the material advantage, the space advantage, the time advantage, so simplifying the board's a good thing. Put him in check yet again, and he opts to pin his own rook against me. He would be able to take a little bit, I don't know if he could run away this time to one of those squares. I do have a horse over here and a queen that can go after a pawn and then really start attacking him, but with rooks being connected, my queen can't take either one of them, no matter what he does with his king if I trap it. So he opts to pin that, however, instead. So fine, I'll just take this guy, and I could have just taken it with the horse, and then he takes it right back with the pawn, but I figured I'll do that later. I'll take this with check first. Now this square is guarded, so I'll be able to take both. Okay, I guess I can't take both, so I'll pop down over here, force you to go somewhere else, and really at this point it cleared up so much space that now I have to chase some ring around the rosy in order to get any sort of attacks going on. Kind of sad. So I'm opting, alright, fine, I'll just do it the quick way. I'll bring this rook on over in 3 moves. Otherwise I'd have to bring him over 1, move my horse somewhere, and then other stuff. So that was my quickest path to get back to attacking. He decides to attack it. While it is defended for now, I'm not quite sure where I was really going with this. I think it was more I just wanted to make him waste his time. It might have also been that I wanted my queen to get up a little bit closer so I could start getting into these flanking squares instead of where my queen can currently sit. She can't be productive diagonally whatsoever. So I opt to defend this pawn with the queen by moving it up and kind of limiting his space and time a little bit. He puts more pieces on it, but really I think he's just trying to connect all of his rooks, activate them, start getting his king a little bit more to safety, and then having his rooks being defended by his king, attacking my pieces, as opposed to a rook defended by a king, defended by a rook. So it doesn't really work out as well that way. But I opt now. I've got the open square. I'll put him in check. If he wants to block it again, sweet, my horse can take it. If he wants to move away to the side, then I can fork him, and it'll leave him forced into an exchange, which is what he chooses to do instead of losing it essentially for free, losing everything. He goes into the forced exchange. Holy, plus 56. That's not even possible. There's not even 56 points on the board, is there? I got, what, 9 plus 10 plus 12 plus 8? Huh, that's really interesting. Plus 56. That's pretty deadly. Good job. Good job, game. So he's forced into taking it. Obviously, I take that right on back. He's attacking a rook, but no big deal. There's nothing he can do about it at this point. He's just kind of moving over into my double file checkmate. Very simplistic. And that ends the game. Relatively quick. Granted, I love how the video took 26 minutes when I was trying to go fast. There weren't really any major strategies or complex things going on. I feel like during the game I was thinking a lot more about how I wanted to progress through some of these plays, but I kind of forget a lot of it now at this point. So really my only main thought was once he accepted that gambit, I wanted to seize some of the space, and then I think it was just a couple of mistakes. Opening up this file for me that caused me to move all my pieces over to attack, bouncing his horse back and forth and back and forth. Just really wasting a little bit of time. So I don't think there was anything fantastic that I particularly did. I think it was more just I had free turns, He was using splash. What am I going to do? So once I kind of identified a little bit of the weaknesses on his side, tried to exploit them and attack them, and I guess technically, well, no, yeah, it's a pretty significant advantage overall, but one of my rooks and one of my horses aren't playing at all. Granted, his rook isn't playing at all either, but so pretty much a simplistic game for the most part overall, but it's good to see how it's not just, even when material was close and he's wasting all that time, we could see how the computer was like, I'm going from 1 to 2 to 3 points of an advantage when nothing really had changed. He's just not being efficient. Efficiency is key. And that was all she wrote, so that's the story of the day. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video as well. I've got more on the way, and hopefully we'll see you for those as well. Take it easy, everybody. Catch you later. Peace.